It's been about a year, in fact a bit more than that, since COVID crashed into the globe. And the virus today and the pandemic we face today continues to rage. In fact, it's worse now than it was at this time last year. And we live in a world that is increasingly uncertain. And I want to echo what Angus has just said. We have to deal with the times we're in. We have to deal with the world as it is, not as we'd necessarily like it to be. And I think that is the practical nature of Liberal national governments, and always has been. Whether it was the Menzies government originally that was dealing with the rebuilding process after the Second World War, or was the prosperity period that was enabled under the Howard government, we are dealing with the pandemic times and having to take the decisions consistent with Liberal values that enable us to take this country through. And I want to talk a bit today about those values and how they apply to the decisions that we've made and the decisions we are making as part of Australia's recovery plan. Right now, here in Australia, we are living like few countries are in the world today. The average fatality rate in the OECD countries, so I'm talking about countries that have similar health systems, similar advanced economies. The average fatality rate in OECD countries is 1,314 per million. In Australia, that figure is 35.7. Now, what that means is had Australia experienced the same rate of fatality from COVID as countries like us all around the world, there would have been more than 30,000 more fatalities here in this country. That's what together as Australians we have worked together to avoid, where in so many other countries around the world they could not. And it swept over them. And it overwhelmed them. And it wreaked great havoc and great devastation. But not here. Not here. And equally, as you can see on the chart, which sets out that top right-hand corner, that's where you want to be. Where your economy is finding its way through strongly through the pandemic, and you've minimised as far as possible the health impacts of the pandemic. So there we sit, amongst a handful of countries in the world today that have been able to find their way through the complete uncertainty that we've faced. I've mentioned it many times when I stood with the Treasurer or the Health Minister or so many others in the Prime Minister's courtyard in Canberra, and I said we are staring into the abyss, and we indeed were. The uncertainty has been at like no other time I've certainly experienced, and for so many others. Those who are more senior to me will remember those awful times of the Great Depression and the Second World War. But for most Australians today, these are things we read about in the history books. They're not things we lived through. But we are living through these times. And so when I look at that and the employment record that Angus referred to, where there are 13.1 million people in work today, and you might flick that forward to the next slide. 13.1 million people employed in Australia today. There were 13 million employed before we went into the pandemic. More people in work today than there were before the pandemic hit. And as you can see from the chart there, once again, no other advanced economy of that scale can lay claim to being in that position right now. So we are indeed fortunate. Anyone who's sort of my age will remember the song by Talking Heads. David Byrne wrote it, Once in a Lifetime. And he talks about you may find yourself living in a shotgun shack. You don't have to sing along. I'm not going to sing it. Beautiful house, beautiful wife. I can certainly lay claim to the second one there. And he brings it all together and he says, well, how did I get here? And the song goes on to say, letting the days go by, but that's not what has happened here with Australia. We haven't arrived at this point right now because we just let the days go by. No, we took action. We were active. We leaned forward. We looked at the challenges and we practically set about getting this right, and as right as we possibly could. Now, that doesn't mean we've got everything right. Sometimes there's that expectation, certainly by my critics, certainly by our political opponents. But on every occasion, we have sought to act in accordance with a set of principles, and from the outset, we set them out. And I remember doing it in March of last year, not far from here. And we said we'd be targeted, we'd be proportionate, we'd be practical. We'd have a road in, we'd have a road out on terms of major spending initiatives and things of that nature. And we'd use things that we know work, not things that we would trial and experiment with. And we followed those principles. And here we are today. Our policy responses have also been about not putting government at the centre or seeing government as the solution. That's what our opponents do. Our response, our solutions were designed to do one thing, and that was to enable every Australian to do what they needed to do to get Australia through this crisis. Keep someone in work, to be in work. And so our policy responses were all geared towards backing Australians in, not seeing government as the answer, but by seeing Australians as the answer. And our government has that in common with the Howard government. It has in common with the Menzies government. This is what Liberal national governments have always done. Backed in the individual enterprise and initiative and determination and resilience of individual Australians, their families and their communities. Government is not the answer. Government is the enabler. And at a time like this, where monetary policy is spent and regrettably borders have to remain closed and we don't have population growth and immigration, then in those circumstances, in those times, a responsible government will act in the way that we have. I want to talk about two programs in particular to demonstrate this. The JobKeeper program. This was a uniquely Australian program. I had no interest in the programs which were being pushed upon us by our opponents, untested, untried systems that didn't exist in this country, and we were urged to be adopting them. But we took our time, but we moved at the same time with great haste. And we developed a program of income support that was uniquely Australian. Very practical. We were using existing channels, the Australian Taxation Office. We knew it would work. We weren't going to try and come up with something new. That's when you get overpriced school halls and people's houses burned down when you put bats in their roof. That's not what we did. We paused, we looked at the experience, and we came up with things that would work because we know they already worked. So we used the existing distribution channels. And fair too. Some of us said we should have had an income support system which was handed out as a percentage of your total income. And I said, we're not doing that. That's not the Australian way. If you're getting taxpayer support, then your need is the same as everyone else's. You're not entitled to a higher level of need than someone else, because if you've lost your job and someone else next to you has lost your job, or you're reduced to 0 hours, you're in the same boat. And we're going to give you the same support. And so we took the decision to do this in a fair way and a practical way. And we did it in a way that was also proportionate to the challenge, and we did it in partnership. JobKeeper would not have worked were it not for the strong confidence of Australia's employers and their employees to trust their employers, and the financial relationship they had with their banks. Because we basically said this: you want to keep your employees? Employers said, yes, yes I do. Employees, do you want to still be with the business? Yes, we do. Okay, this is what can happen. We need you to go to your bank, we need you to go and borrow next month's payroll, and we'll sort you out on the other side. And for employers, we know that means that's a big thing for you to take on, but we'll back you in. And for employees, yes, you may not have the hours you had before, and yes, you may not have the income you had before, but this is going to see you through. And they said, yep, we're in for that. And we went and changed a number of the industrial relations laws, which gave us the flexibility so they could all work together and work this through. That's the Liberal way. That's the coalition way. This wasn't government being the answer, making you come along to a government office to get a government check. This was done in partnership, and this was unique. But importantly on JobKeeper, and this is what's important about how we're doing these things, we knew we had to start and we knew we had to stop. And there were plenty of people, particularly our political opponents, who would say, no, don't stop, don't step it down, keep it in, keep it going forever. And that's what they would have done. And while we carry a massive debt now, which we don't deny, had we followed the advice of those who said you couldn't turn this off, it would have been far worse, and it would still be building even now. And it would have taken resource that we couldn't put then into the programs we are now investing in through this most recent budget. So you know when to get in and you know when to get out. And we held firm to that decision, and I think that said a lot about the way that we seek to manage budgets and work with others. Now there's another one, and that's called Home Builder. The residential building industry was facing falling off a cliff in September of last year. And so earlier in that year, we put the program together, which would have seen $25,000 to support Australians who wanted to build their own home. The program was so successful that now some $2.7 billion has been invested in this program, which is leveraging some $39 billion worth of construction activity in our residential building sector. Now, our opponents bagged us. They said it won't work. Did. Big time. Years of pipeline of work to our construction industry and the flow-on effects of that. When the home is built and you buy your fridge and you get your carpet and you buy your car. So Madeline Tynan down here. The multiplier effects of that and the confidence that it builds. $2.7 billion investment, $39 billion outcome advised by the master builders. More than 100,000 homes built and being built because of that program. Now we back that in, of course, by backing Australians' decision to want to go and invest that and to go and be that, a first homeowner, a home builder. We put 25,000 down. They put down the other 300,000, 350,000, 400,000. We leveraged their decision, their enterprise, their confidence. We didn't become it, we unleashed it by making this investment. And one of the things, and I know John Alexander, who's passionate about people owning their own home, constantly invoking to us as leaders the Menzies mission of home ownership, which I think our party speaks so strongly to. We have now the highest level of first home buyers in March in 11 years as a result of this program, the First Home Loan Deposit Scheme, the First Home Super Saver program. And 1/3 of all owner-occupied loans in the March quarter were for first home buyers. We haven't seen that in quite a while. I know it's still hard. It's very hard to buy your first home. It's really hard. It's really hard to save for that deposit. Very difficult. But more Australians are achieving that at the moment than we've seen in a very long time because of the programs we've put in place. But it's not just in that private housing market. The National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation, which we established when I was Treasurer. That organisation in just 3 years has directly, through its activities, seen 2,700 new affordable housing dwellings financed through that program and refinancing some 6,500 more affordable homes. Working with the community housing sector, directly in partnership with them with the Bondi aggregator model. And the National Housing Infrastructure Fund, which does enabling infrastructure to ensure that other housing developments can proceed, has supported, and this is just in 3 years, more than 4,400 new dwellings across the country. Again, not government just being it, working with community organisations, with partnerships who are also putting equity and their own effort into these things to realise it. We're enabling, we're leveraging, we're not replacing. We're not saying, sit down, we'll do it. We'll say, we'll stand next to you and we'll do it together. That's the Liberal national way. Now, we saw an alternative to this last night, where the leader of the opposition, the leader of the Labor Party, says he's going to build 30,000 homes. But this is the math. This is the Albenomics maths. A plan for housing, when you compare it to HomeBuilder, that will spend 4 times as much and get 2/3 less houses. That's what it is. 4 times as much and 2/3 less. And you wonder why they always want to increase taxes. Because the gap between that's how they meet it. Now, they said, though, oh no, we're going to pay for it by the dividends out of the Future Fund. Now, I think Peter Costello is a pretty amazing individual, and I think he does an amazing job at the Future Fund. But in order to meet those targets, the Future Fund has to double the rate of return. Double the rate of return on a fund that will draw down, as opposed to the existing fund where all earnings are reinvested. The maths don't just add up. The sentiment is genuine, I'm sure, no doubt. It's a sentiment we share, ensuring that Australians can get into affordable homes. But when it comes down to it, you need people who know how to make this happen. And whether it's in HomeBuilder or the National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation or the many other initiatives we've put in place, we're getting this done. And I think that highlights how we're going about these tasks. So our policies, our responses to leverage the efforts of Australians sets out how we need to keep going about this. We need to keep doing what works. We need to go even further, because that's what's required to secure Australia's recovery. And this budget is a plan to secure Australia's recovery. And what that should tell you is that we know it can be lost. We know we can lose the gains. We know we live in circumstances, as we've seen in so many other countries, Europe going into a double-dip recession. We know that everything Australians have worked so hard for over the last 18 months, and the big decisions that have had to be made, the great gains can be lost with the wrong approach. They can be lost if we don't hold our nerve. They can be lost if we don't maintain the direction that we've set ourselves in these many months going into where we are now. So our economic recovery plan, and I'm not going to go through every one of these points, you'll be pleased to know. You can read all about it in the budget. But that plan, lower taxes, a highly skilled workforce, reliable, secure and affordable energy achieved by technology, not taxes, a transformative digital agenda, which I spoke of a few weeks ago, understanding the future of the digital economy and how that's going to drive Australia's success in the future. $1.2 billion in this year's budget. There was $800 million in last year's budget. $2 billion in the space of 7 months committed to Australia's digital transformation. Easing the regulatory burden, cutting the red tape for businesses. Record infrastructure investment, our rolling $110 billion plan. Prioritising the dynamic industries of the future, our modern manufacturing initiative only launched last October, as those roadmaps are now out and the funds are now available for application. These critical sectors, which are so important to Australia's future, this budget sets out once again further investment to make things here in Australia and keep making things here in Australia and making smart things here in Australia. But so fundamental to this plan is lower taxes, as Angus said. We are the party of lower taxes. And in this budget, we set that out again. Went to the last election fighting on the basis that Australians should keep more of what they earn. We made that commitment. And we legislated that after the budget, after the election, I should say. And those lower taxes, that principle which says $1 in your pocket is better than $1 in the government's pocket. You're more likely to turn that into $10 than the government is, I can assure you. And that's why I want it in your pocket. Because in your pocket, you'll invest it. In your pocket, you'll look after a family. In your pocket, you'll build a home. In your pocket, you'll make a difference with it. And that's what lower taxes mean. And that's why when some say, oh, but now we need to increase taxes because of the great weight of the things that are needed to be done by governments, I say, no, this is the worst time to do that. And as I saw those recommendations come in before the budget and people saying, oh, you need to raise taxes to do this or raise taxes to do that, no. The Australian economy's recovery is strong and stronger than almost anywhere else in the world. But it is not immune to bad policy. And bad policy is higher taxes when you're seeking to recover and grow your economy and build it for the future again. Now, there are many measures in there. Of course, the extension of the LMITO, the lower middle income tax offset, which will be a further stimulus measure into the economy as it has been this year, so it will be next year. It's a stimulus measure, unapologetically. But the temporary full expensing provisions that are in there for business, which are seeking to drive investment, are incredibly important. It will cover some $320 billion of investment. It supports 99% of businesses and the 11.5 million Australians who work for them. The spending on machinery and equipment already now is its fastest rate of increase in 7 years from the tax incentives we're already providing for investment right now. Now, you will know that the Australian corporate tax rate has been 30 cents in the dollar for a very long time. For the first time now, for those businesses under 50 million, from the 1st of July, that will fall to 25%. And that is welcome. But that's not all, because across so many areas of the tax system where we provide support, particularly for firms and businesses that are investing, firms that are investing in technology and research and development and so many other areas, there are myriad tax incentives that play into an even more advantaged tax position for businesses who are looking to invest and to grow and to employ. Now, in this budget, there was new arrangements for digital game developers, for medical and biotech companies with the new Patent Box initiative, which I think is incredibly exciting for innovation and technology in those sectors. And we look forward to how we can bring that into the clean energy sector and rolling it out in those areas. And we're seeing an enormous investment take place, I think, in those areas now, and that will only increase into the future. But when you take into account all of these various incentives, work done under the Global Talent Program, which is led by Peter Verwa, he's had some work done with Accenture and they've worked with my department, shows that the effective tax rate in Australia right now, because of all the measures that we've put in as a government, the effective tax rate for new investment in this country is 21%. Not 30, not 25, 21%. Now that's a competitive position to be in. And I'm not putting those taxes up because I need that tax rate to be at that competitive level to attract the best, the brightest, to put the investment into firms, to lift our productivity. And as we go out around the world through this initiative, and you can see it in the step-down chart, which I won't take you through, but whether it's a biotech company, a small capital-intensive manufacturer, when you throw in the supports on R&D and amortisation and depreciation and instant expensing, when you throw then in on top of that what we're doing in the Modern Manufacturing Initiative and the other supports that are there, and now with the Patent Box, I mean, for some firms, we will see, particularly in the biotech, research, innovation sectors, an effective tax rate for new investment of somewhere between 10 and 15%. Now, that's competitive. That's a reason to move your business here and now. And you can move your business into a country that has one of the most successful records on both the economy and health of any country in the world. And that's what the new Global Talent Program is doing, even as we speak. It's an exciting new program which was initiated by our government. It's focused on attracting high-value enterprise and exceptionally talented individuals. 30% of our attraction so far in the digitech sector, a quarter are researchers and entrepreneurs in health and life sciences. That includes a global expert in SARS-CoV-2 and research into Hep B. 20% is in pioneers, particularly in research and clean energy. So, friends and supporters, thank you for being here today. The budget is a plan to secure Australia's recovery, and it's the right plan, ground deep in liberal and national values that have served the nation on so many occasions in the past, whether it was the challenges of the Menzies time or the Howard time or indeed our time now. These values are what guide us. And it says that it's government supporting the initiative and enterprise and determination of individual Australians, enabling it, standing with them, not seeking to replace them, hold them back, or tell them that government knows better. Government can do good things, but I tell you what, the Australian people can do better. And that's what we want to leverage, and that's what our government is about. Business-led growth. 8 out of 10 employees are in the private sector, and that's where the further job growth is going to come from. And it's not going to come from government getting in the way of that. It's going to come from government enabling that, to back it in, to support it, so you can deal with the many challenges that you have. So we'll keep going on that path. We will ensure that through this budget, we will stay on top of COVID-19. We will ensure that we continue to create jobs and build our economy for the future, guarantee those essential services that Australians rely on, whether that be in aged care or mental health in particular, which receives such treatment in the budget, or protecting women's safety. And indeed to ensure that we make sure Australia is resilient and secure in a very uncertain world. And I think with all of that together, this budget, I think, meets the challenges of the times, consistent with the Liberal and Nationals values that we hold dear. Thank you very much for your attention.